In this video, I'll show you step-by-step how to keep your BMW engine from overheating. I'm going to walk you through the exact manual bleeding procedure to get every bit of air out of the system, whether you've just installed a new thermostat or simply swapped out the coolant. The whole process consists of several critical steps that must be performed one by one. So, let's get to work. This is going to be the only guide on YouTube for manually bleeding BMW engines. But first, there are two things you need to know. First, the entire manual bleeding process consists of 3 key stages to remove all the air from the cylinder head and every other nook and cranny. Second, to fully complete this procedure, you're going to need a full day. There's simply no way to rush it, and I'll explain why while showing you the whole process on my own car. I've just finished replacing the thermostat in my BMW e61 with the 3-litre diesel engine. First, I'm pouring in fresh OE coolant mixed in the manufacturer recommended ratio of 1:1 with distilled water to get the right concentration. I'm filling it up to the level marked as maximum on the expansion tank. Next, I'm backing out the bleed screw to let the air out until a bit of coolant starts to seep through. Once that happens, I tighten it down and do the exact same thing with the second bleeder valve located under the throttle body. It's a bit harder to reach, so you'll likely need to pull the intake duct to get to it. After releasing the air, I put the intake duct back in its place and check the coolant level in the expansion tank, which I top off if the level drops below the minimum. I'm leaving the expansion tank cap off for now. Then I jump into the car, start the engine, and set the heater to the maximum temperature at any fan speed. If you head to the front of the car now, you'll see the coolant flowing through the expansion tank via the so-called small circuit, which is exactly what bleeds the system. At first, you'll notice air bubbles and some foam coming out. That's a sign the bleeding process is working. If you don't see that stream, it's a red flag that your water pump isn't functioning properly and might need a replacement. Now comes the stage that is nowhere to be found on YouTube and where the most people make a mistake. I'm screwing the expansion tank cap back on and warming the engine up to 71 degrees Celsius, and not a single degree more. That's because the first EGR thermostat opens at exactly that temperature. But heads up, this is crucial. Let the engine warm up while idling. Do not drive the car. You want it to heat up slowly so the small circuit has enough time to purge as much air as possible. If you drive it, the process won't be nearly as effective. If you don't have a temperature gauge or a diagnostic interface, check out my other video on how to access the hidden BMW menu to monitor your exact temperature at 0 extra cost. Once we hit 71 degrees Celsius, the first thermostat opens and I shut off the engine. Now comes another crucial stage. The engine must cool down completely. You need to wait several hours before continuing with the bleeding process. This is because any air that might have moved from the first thermostat into the cylinder head has now turned into steam and won't be purged by the small coolant circuit due to the high temperature. That's why we wait for the engine to cool down. While we're waiting, please leave a like and a comment so I can keep growing this channel. Thank you! Once the engine has cooled down, I unscrew the expansion tank cap, where the fluid level should have dropped a bit. I also see some steam, which means I rushed a little too much and I'll have to wait a bit longer. I top off the coolant until the optimal level is reached and go to have one more coffee. Upon returning, I screw the cap back on and start the car for the second time. Just like in the previous case, I turn the cabin blower to heat, set it to the maximum temperature, and allow the car to warm up this time to the full operating temperature, which is 89 degrees Celsius. Again, I'm not driving the car. I'm only warming up the engine while idling, as this gives the small circuit enough time to circulate all the water and purge any air bubbles. At 88 degrees Celsius, the main thermostat opens. After a replacement, air bubbles often remain trapped inside its housing, and they now head straight into the cylinder head. Once again, the small circuit won't be able to remove them at full operating temperature, so as soon as we hit 89 degrees Celsius, I shut off the engine immediately and let the unit cool down completely for the second time. For the second time, we have a situation where air escaping from the open thermostat, which was previously trapped there, has entered the engine and turned into steam. Now, to get rid of it, we must cool the engine down and remove it under cool conditions when the steam is gone. Once the engine is cold, I unscrew the EGR cooler bleed screw one more time to release any air that escaped the head and might have settled there during the steps we've taken so far. I also back out the second bleed screw under the throttle body for the same reason. After that, I perform a final check of the coolant level in the expansion tank and top it off if necessary. Right after that, I start the car for the third and final time, warming it up at a standstill to full operating temperature. Once it's warm, let the engine run for a few more minutes to ensure the thermostat is working correctly and holding the right temperature. If everything looks good and, after fully reaching operating temperature, you see no leaks or steam and the temperature stays within the range of 88 to 91 degrees while driving, then the process is a success. At this point, there should be 0 air bubbles left in the circuit. Just to be safe, check the fluid level after some time to ensure there are no leaks in the system. If you enjoyed this material, check out my video on the full rebuild of this bulletproof engine.